Hello, friends. My name is Meredith Gudger-Rains, and I'm the pastor at Ridgefield United Methodist Church. And I'm Ruth Berry's pastor, which was a great honor and a great joy. I know that you are looking for her service, and I am so sorry to tell you that in the busyness of that day and trying to make sure all the technology worked correctly, I did not hit the record button. And so all the technology that we used worked correctly, but the technology I didn't use didn't work because I didn't press record. What you will find here, though, are the songs that we sang, the slideshow of pictures of Ruth's friends and her life, some clips from the graveside service. And so I wanted to also bring you the words that I shared, my reflections on Ruth and my witness to how I saw God in her life. So I'm re-recording my homily that I gave at her worship service. I'll also say, though, at her worship service, we had people join us from 10 different states at her memorial service, family and friends from her childhood and from all parts of her life. And we were able to share some really special stories. So I'm sorry, I ask for your forgiveness because I messed up in that capacity, but it was so good to gather together. Ruth was really special to all of us, and it was good to tell those stories and remember that she's still present with us, even though she's dancing in heaven. So let me share with you my thoughts. I became a pastor because I experience God in community, and I want others to experience God in community as well. We all need and want to belong. We want to fit somewhere, to be seen and loved, to be at peace. I believe this is God's will, that we will all find our belonging in God's presence. And the community around us is one way that we can feel that belonging here in this lifetime, God's will done on earth as it is in heaven. Ruth helped me to live out this heavenly community here on earth. She was a wonderful witness to the power of love, belonging, and community. Ruth did not have an easy life. She knew a lot of tragedy and suffering. It would have been very understandable for anyone in her circumstances to become bitter, angry, vengeful, despondent. But as many times as Ruth got knocked down, she got up again. As many times as she was betrayed, she reached out to love and trust again. And so she was a person of joy, of gratitude, of accomplishment, of community, and of faith. One of her phrases was, "You can get bitter or you can get better." Ruth faced down the bitterness and she chose better. Ruth was born and raised in Pittsburgh. She joined the Navy right after her 18th birthday, and that launched her into her adult life. I don't think she ever lived in Pittsburgh after that, but she retained her Pittsburgh accent for the rest of her life. Ruth did not live in a house, she lived in a house. She married and had 3 children. Now, this family would later become the source of more pain and suffering in her life. But I know from her stories that there were some happy times when her children were little. She often talked about working with the children and youth in the church. She remembered different children's sermons she gave, or songs that they would play in the church van on their way to field trips and adventures. She had fond memories of filling the little communion cups in the church kitchen with some of the older church ladies. Church was one of those places where she felt at home. Ruth also felt at home in the library. She worked at the Ridgefield Library in the 1990s before it moved to its current location. She loved working at the library, and she treated that job like she had taken an oath to work there. She told me that as a librarian, you do not talk about what books and materials people check out. They have a right to any information in the library. One time, a father came into the library demanding to know what books his daughter had checked out, and Ruth wouldn't tell him. She was protecting one of her community. Even after she stopped working there, Ruth had a lifelong love for the library. In the years when I knew her, when she was homebound by her health, she was still an active library patron. She knew all the services that the library offered, and she used them all. She would call the library and order books or books on CD and have them sent to her in the mail. More times than I can count, she and I would be visiting about something and we'd have a question. Ruth would say, "Let's call the library." And she'd get her phone, put it on speaker, and dial 906-5000. They would answer and she'd say, "Hi, it's Ruth." And the librarian would always say, "Oh, hi, Ruth." The librarians were part of her community, and they would look something up for her, maybe a recipe ingredient or someone from history or the definition of a word. One time she and I were both really into the Great British Baking Show, and we wondered what castor sugar was, because that was a British term. We didn't know what the US equivalent was. So she called 906-5000 so they could look up castor sugar for her. And after we'd find out, she'd hang up and then she'd turn to me and say, "Anytime you need to know something, you just call 906-5000. Ruth's connection to the library has earned all librarians a special place in my heart. After Ruth worked for the library, after her children were grown, Ruth did something that required a lot of courage and determination. She went to college. Ruth never had much external support from the people who are supposed to support you. She often heard the opposite messages, that she wasn't smart enough for college. So she must have dug down deep and found within herself a belief that she was smart enough and hardworking enough for college. She went to WSUV and she was part of the debate team there. She had a lot of stories to tell about traveling around and the successes that she had as part of the debate team. She also used her debate and public speaking experience to offer me some critiques of my sermon style from time to time. Now, Ruth was always very complimentary and supportive and encouraging, but she did tell me that I used the word right way too often at the end of my sentences. Right? So to this day, I can't say the word right without thinking in my head of Ruth. I would always try to visit her sometime towards the end of the week, and she would ask me if I'd finished up my sermon yet, and she would say, "Did you put the bow on the package?" And I would say, "Oh, no, Ruth, the bow is not on the package. It's nowhere near on the package. It's only Thursday, Ruth." I think she was probably a much more organized student than I was. Despite important people in her life telling her she was too stupid for college, Ruth earned her bachelor's degree with honors. In the slideshow, you'll see some really touching pictures of her with her honors cords around her neck, and then those same sashes around Jonah's neck, Jonah, her beloved grandson. And she didn't stop there. She went on and got a master's degree in social work. When Ruth talked about getting her degrees, she always talked about the friends who worked with her. She even got an award from her good friend Pam. Pam was in an MSW program in a different university, and when she graduated, she gave Ruth a certificate of appreciation that said that her degree would not have been possible without the guidance and selfless assistance of Ruth. Ruth welcomed others in need into her community. After graduating in 2006 with her MSW, Ruth said it was like a puzzle piece that had finally found her spot. She fit in that work. And she used the puzzle metaphor to talk about the clients that she worked with as well. Being a social worker was like finding just the right spot where people would fit, where they would belong. She had found her calling. And then, in 2007, Ruth suffered a debilitating stroke, which limited her mobility and her ability to work. Plenty of people would give up hope after losing a dream job after such a short time. But Ruth again chose better, not bitter. When I met Ruth in 2014, she was pretty much wheelchair bound. She had several close friends who would provide transportation and help, and she had in-home caregivers as well, some of whom became very good friends. One thing I noticed in my years of visiting Ruth was that she addressed everyone who came into her presence. She wanted to know everyone's name, and she made sure that she introduced everyone else in the room. The stroke affected her short-term memory a bit, and so she often reintroduced us. She introduced us every time you came to her room, but that was always a source of joy and community. I began to see that here was a woman who could not leave her house on her own and who often needed help with simple tasks like getting to the bathroom or making breakfast. But she had a community of people near and far. She gathered people to her, and she kept track of people, and she introduced them to each other. She wanted everyone to belong. In the years that I knew her, she had countless trips to the hospital. But here's an example of how Ruth just created community wherever she went. I went to visit her once at the hospital just as she was being discharged, and so I walked out with her as they wheeled her down the hall toward the elevators. And I'm not kidding, people from all over that floor shouted out, "Bye, Ruth, we're glad you're going home, feel better, bye, Ruth, thank you." I mean, people in the hallway, at the nurse's station, people from other patients' rooms, they all knew Ruth and she knew them. In her last year, life was very difficult for Ruth. She lost the ability to walk and had to live in a care center. Her pain was constant, and she struggled with the loss of control over her life. I know she regretted that sometimes, with some of the staff who cared for her, she slipped into bitterness. The COVID restrictions meant she couldn't have visitors. She missed her mom. I regret not being able to visit her as often as we were used to. But even in such a difficult time, Ruth found a new way to be in community. Since we were doing virtual church, Ruth could join in. She wasn't hampered by her physical limitations. She came to all our Bible studies and participated even on Sunday mornings. I think it was a joy for her, and I know it was a joy for us. Even this fall, just a week or two before she got so sick, she was part of our anti-racism study, and she added to our discussion from her experiences with race in her childhood. Ruth never stopped wanting everyone to belong. But most of all, what I remember about Ruth was that she welcomed me to be part of her community. I was one of her friends. She made me feel special. I will always love her for that, and I will miss our visits. Ruth had an unwavering faith in God's love for her, which must have given her the confidence to earn her degrees, to welcome everyone she saw, and to always choose to be better, not bitter. She called herself a daughter of the King, which made her a princess. She was a wonderful person for prayer, and sometimes I would call her to ask her to pray for special people, someone in our community, or even one of my personal friends. Remember what Jesus tells his friends in this moment of crisis, when he knows his death is coming and they haven't quite figured it out yet, and he's trying to prepare them to go on without him, but also with him. In a little while, the world will no longer see them, but they will see him. He tells them, "I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come again and take you to myself, so that where I am, there you may be also." Isn't this at the heart of life? To be welcomed by God, to have a place just for you, created by God. In Ruth's life, she knew places that should have been safe, but weren't. So she created other places of belonging and community, both for herself and for others. And now, ultimately, she is at home, at peace, in the place that Jesus has made just for her. She is with him. I can see her rejoicing with the beloved community, reunited with her mother and her dear ones, saying everyone's name and making all the introductions. I can hear her boisterous laugh